Hello and welcome to Lecture 2 for ECU311. This is Jacob Andre, your lecturer. Today we are talking about visual arts. And we're going to start off with the stages of development in children's visual expression. So you've got 4 stages of development: manipulation ages, which is approximately 1 to 5 years of age; symbolic ages, approximately 5 to 8 years; visual realism ages, approximately 8 to 11; and reasoning ages, approximately 11 to 14 years of age. Being art, health and PE for the early years, we're just going to focus on the first 2 stages, manipulation and symbolic. So in the manipulation stage, it's all about random scribbling. It's also about controlled scribbling and named scribbling. So the first intellectual connection between the physical and cognitive functioning. So in the manipulation stage, scribbling is seen as a kinesthetic activity, which means that you are aware of movements of your body. And at first, children make no connection between the scribbling marks that they make and the motor activity that they are engaging in. But later on, they'll develop a connection, which is most likely about expressing what he or she is doing. When children are capable of retaining a mental image, this is when they start to then name their scribbles, and this aligns with Piaget's intuitive thought stage within the concrete operations period. So the first controlled scribble a child makes is typically that of the mandala, which is a circular shape. So children will start to do that initially, and then from there they'll start to scribble. In the symbolic stage, which is defined as development of symbols and a schematic or diagrammatic symbolism, young children in the symbolic stage begin to make their representational attempts. So shapes tend to be more geometric, and children most often create art that is based on their experiences. So for example, you'll see children starting to draw pictures of their family, mostly. So mother, father, brothers, sisters, pets, maybe a house, maybe a son. And so things that they see often in their life. These are often out of proportion, so you might have really big heads or really big bodies, really long stick figure legs, and so on. So children often exaggerate in their art and what is important to them, and there's rarely a sense of proportion, like I just said. So they also choose colours based on the colours that they like and the emotional attachment they have to those colours. So how they feel when they look at and use those colours. Children also become more aware of their environment in this stage. So remember, this is the stage of 5 to 8. So typically starting school now, and they begin to use baselines at the bottom of their page to draw houses and flowers. There's often a sky, so there might be some M-shaped birds, and there might be some clouds. And sky may also be represented as a coloured strip at the top of the page. Okay, so what teachers can do to encourage children: give them opportunities to scribble, so just free time opportunities to be able to just put down whatever they feel like onto the screen. Be enthusiastic and encouraging, so not as a teacher being too strict on what you specifically want children to do, but look at what they're doing, and without asking questions about what it is that they're intending to do or what is that representing in the art that they create, but allowing them the freedom to be able to just do whatever they feel like. So be enthusiastic about the work that they've created and encouraging about what that is. So provide opportunities for children to experiment and explore, and this is where I just mentioned about not being too defined in what children are planning to do, but just let it happen, let it unfold. Encourage personal expression. So encourage children to just express by just putting out whatever they feel like. So just put a piece of paper on the, for example, if it's drawing, put a piece of paper on the desk and some pencils and just let them draw whatever they feel like. Or it might be put up a piece of paper and give them some paint and let them paint whatever they feel like. So let them express whatever it is that they're thinking and feeling at the time. And create activities that allow for maximum creative input from the children. So this is, again, where you just let them be, let them create whatever they may, rather than ask them to plan out something and tell you what they're going to do and also what they are doing during that. So just let them start developing whatever they feel like developing and let that process run throughout the process. Okay, and that is a good segue for the process versus the product. So decide if you want to place the value on the process or the end product, and there's no one better than the other here. In some circumstances in teaching, you will be focusing on the process of something, and in some circumstances you'll be focusing on the end product. So you'll be getting them to create something. But there's a real value in also forgetting about what the end product is and allowing students to just engage in the process, so the journey, if you will. So for example, if all students were to paint a yellow duck with an orange beak, does it matter how each of them achieved this or did this? So if you are focusing on the end product, well then, you would essentially then have 20 students and 20 ducks looking the same because you're focusing on the end product. But in a process approach, you're focusing more on what the students do to be able to achieve that. So you might have 20 very different looking ducks at the end of the lesson. So in the process approach, you're encouraging creativity. You're allowing students to be able to use their own skills and ideas and decision making and problem solving to be able to create whatever it is that they're going to create. So it's all about the process. The creative process is the most important component to the process approach, and you are encouraging children to pay attention to the feelings behind the work. They might not consciously think about the feelings, but they will be experiencing feelings, and this is really important in the process approach. And also encourage experimentation with materials. So encourage children to use different materials, and you might do this by just putting a whole range of different materials out. For example, a fly swat, some fly wire, some sticks, some twigs, some sponges, different types of material, for example, goop or jelly, and allow children to just pick and choose whatever it is they want to use in order to create whatever it is that they're creating. So the process approach to learning is all about playing around with ideas. It's about exploring a range of materials and methods for using them. It's about taking advantage of accidents. So if there's a spill and a student drops some paint onto their work, not seeing that as a failure or a mistake and then wanting a new piece of paper, but seeing how you can incorporate that into the art that they're creating. Seek out activities that provide sensory pleasure. So if some children prefer to be more hands-on, if some children prefer to be more auditory or visual, then seek out opportunities to be able to provide that sensory pleasure. Welcome discoveries about media, cooperate in the give and take of ideas, honour the unexpected, solve problems through trial and error. Allow your feelings and emotions to lead you in creating. View the process as a way of communicating your thoughts and ideas and initiating a new way of learning. So the process approach really is about what are you valuing. And so are you valuing what the student creates at the end, or are you valuing the process that they're going through, the journey that they're undertaking in order to go from a blank piece of paper, for example, to some sort of product? So regardless of what that looks like at the end, it's all about getting there. And so, like I said earlier, you might have some very, very different looking end products because you have put your focus on the process ahead of the end product. Again, neither one is right or wrong, but there's just different approaches for how you might teach an art lesson. In the product approach, the emphasis is on the end product. The final product is the most important part, as opposed to the process approach, where the journey is the most important part of the approach. In the product approach, the final product, what you create at the end, is the most important part. The aesthetic appearance is also most important, so how it looks and encourages training and technique. So this is really more of an older child development thing, where it's really about the training that you're undertaking and training yourself in art skills and in the techniques that you're using throughout the process. Some examples for children to explore with include crayons. So there's just so many, and even just going through this lecture beforehand, I was surprised at just how many things there are that children can play with. So you've got crayons, chalk, textures, pencils, paintbrushes. You've got your fingers for finger painting. You've even got your hands and feet for hand and feet painting. You've got sand if you wanted to create, give each student a tub or a tray and put sand in it and create their art. Using their fingers or some other object by making lines in the sand. You could use shaving cream. It's going to be a little bit messy potentially, particularly with younger children, but there's an example there. Cake batter, so you might link it in with some home economics in some way. Sponges are great. I know we painted our palm tree trunks at home with some paint and sponges. A fly swatter, a squirt bottle, so squirting paint onto a canvas or some paper. Sticks and twigs. You've got fly wire for creating different textures and different patterns. Soap flakes, clay, Play-Doh, jelly, and many more. So just think outside the box when it comes to types of materials that you can use for creating art. Sensory awareness development. So moving into the next part on LearnLine. So you've got touch, smell, hearing, and sight. So when you're developing sensory awareness, it's really important that you look at all different types. And so we've got here touch, smell, hearing, and sight. Touch, for example. So examples of how you would develop the sense of touch. So use a feely bag with diverse contents inside, and examples of different things which you might put inside are like a chamois or some steel wool, a stone, different materials, dice, for example, and get children to play around with the feely bag and potentially even guess what's in the bag. You might have messy play activities with goop. Goop is water and what was it again? I forget. It'll come to me a little bit later on, I suspect. Corn flour, I think it's corn flour and water. And then jelly, of course. So jelly is such an awesome thing to run your fingers through if you haven't ever done it. It's a bit of a waste of jelly, but it's really, really, particularly for students who are very kinesthetic and hands-on and touchy, then running your fingers through jelly and goop, and even using Play-Doh are just very, very relaxing, calm, and very good for developing the sense of touch. So ask children to bring in objects that they find in nature. So it might be at home, so it might be a homework activity where students are asked to bring in different objects from home, or it might be that you ask them to collect some objects out in nature at recess or lunch, or maybe you go out as a class and go and collect different objects and pay attention to how they feel. So collecting different texture materials, for example, bark, so paper bark or hard bark, grass even, sand, anything you can think of out in the environment. Have children pass their favourite object around a circle, so ask them to bring in their favourite toy or object at home and have children pass that around a circle. So while the child is talking about their object, it's being passed around the classroom for children to have a look at and really get the hands-on feel, because some kids may not have experienced certain things that some children will bring in. Do a nature walk and feel things in their environment. So rather than bringing them back, just get children to feel every single thing that they come across. Take shoes off and walk around and walk through different surfaces, so grass, dirt, sand, and so on. Footprinting, handprinting, fingerprinting, again, they're types of ways of developing visual art and also the sense of touch, and get children to pretend they're holding something. So get them to close their eyes and pretend, and you give them an object that they're going to hold visually, and so they use their imagination. And a pineapple is a good example. And pay attention to their facial expressions and how they kind of show what they're imagining. So it might be that they pretend to hold a icy cold, like even a chunk of ice, or get them to hold something which might be spiky. Get them to pretend to bounce a ball. So visualize bouncing a ball, say, for example, and so on. So you've got smell next. Get students to close their eyes and smell a range of things. So you might have different smells in different containers, and you open the lid and get children to go around and smell whatever that smell is and guess what that smell might be. Ask students to think what they think of or remember when they smell something. So you might either come up with a smell, or you might just call out the name of a smell that is a common smell, and ask them to pay attention and to let you know what they think of or what they remember when they think of that smell or when they experience that smell. Go to different environments and consider what smells are present. So you might again go out into the environment, into nature during class time, go to the playground and just get children to consider different things, or go to the flower garden or the veggie garden and smell different scents through the schoolyard. And then get them to follow scents. So maybe have a strong scent that you've got and get children to, obviously safely follow along with your scent. So you carry the scent along and they've got to follow the scent. And this is the sort of thing that you'd probably do on an oval. So you set it up with safety first, and you talk about no running, everyone's walking, hands out in front to protect yourself, small steps, and get children to follow a scent around. Or maybe it's in the classroom where it's been cleared out and they're on their hands and knees and they follow a particular scent around the room. Hearing, so go on a listening walk. So you can see there's a theme here. There's going on a walk out in the environment for all of these senses. So go on a listening walk and count how many different sounds you can hear, or try and recognise what a certain sound is. For example, a bird or a cicada chirping, and get children to recognise what those sounds are. Ask them to close their eyes and listen for sounds. So it might be that they lay out in the environment or even in the classroom. Potentially in the environment would be very, very valuable, and get them to listen out for sounds and see what they can hear. And if they can recognise more sounds when their eyes are closed as opposed to when their eyes are open. And how many different sounds can water make? So it might be in the classroom and you have different, so you turn your tap on and you have water hit different objects. So you might have water hitting up against paper or metal, or water going into a bottle, or water being poured out of a bottle, and so on. And paying attention to how many different sounds water can make. What colours... listen to different genres of music. So have them listen to some classical music, some rock music, some pop music, and recognise how those different types of music, those genres, make them feel. So how do you feel when you hear this and play some classical music? How do you feel when you hear this and play some clean R&B music, and so on? So get them to recognise how they feel in terms of emotions, but also how it makes them, in terms of emotions, but also, do they enjoy different types of music? Some musics, do they make you really energetic and angry? Does some music make you very relaxed and calm, for example? And play around with playing different music, potentially especially classical music after lunch, for example. when children are coming in hot and sweaty, particularly in Darwin. What colours would a sound have? So paying attention to and asking children to think about a certain sound, and if that sound was a colour, what would that colour be? So again, with the music, it might be playing classical music. If this music had a colour, what colour would you give it? Some children, might be yellow, blue, green, orange, whatever. Play certain sounds, so different sounds, which might be a bell going or an alarm going off. What colour do you associate with that sound? And it might be that an alarm goes off. Might be, for a lot of people, it'll be red. But what is that for young children who maybe haven't been, classically conditioned as much to when an alarm goes off that it means that something is going wrong, or is it an innate sense of, alarm means red or orange? And then listen to mystery sounds and identify. So listen to different sounds and try and identify what different sounds are. So again, like an alarm going off, people clapping, and an applause, people cheering, play all different sounds and get children to identify what those sounds are. And I remember this story of this high school teacher at Darwin High who, she was an art teacher, and she said, could you imagine if the wind had a colour, and it was a different colour based on the intensity of the wind? And, wind goes in different levels, and that's how hot air balloons change direction. So you've got some wind you've got the ground down here, you've got some wind going in one direction, wind higher up going in a different direction, and so on. And so hot air balloons go up and down through those different winds in order to be able to change direction. And so it's something I've never been able to forget about, and I always think about it now after hearing that imagine if wind was a different colour, and you had a green wind and a blue wind and an orange wind, and imagine what the world would look like if we saw wind as colour, as opposed to just, something that we can't see unless it's actually making something move. So I just find that fascinating and a good concept, and get children to think about that. All right, our last one is sight. So again, go for a looking walk this time. So go out into the environment and look for different things. Look for as many things as you can see, and what can you see? Collect objects on your walk and examine them. So objects could be, some bark off a tree, or some leaves or twigs. Look for patterns in nature. So, the most obvious one is laying out in the environment and looking up at the sky and making patterns out of clouds. I actually remember still doing this in about grade 5, laying on this grassed area outside of our classroom and trying to make patterns for 15 minutes. And at the time, I remember I really struggled, but it's something that now, if I was to look up at the clouds, I could quite easily find something. And I find it interesting in the types of the themes that come up when you are looking at clouds and coming up with objects, and whether it's always a generally positive patterns or objects that you can see, or generally negative. So get children to make objects out of the clouds, make objects out of trees, make objects and patterns out of the grass and different things. So look for different patterns out in nature, and then you can link that into maths, say for example. Observation games. So in a classroom, get children to look around the classroom, and you might start off with making this one small area, or just in the vicinity of the whiteboard or the front of the classroom, or one corner, and get children to pay attention to what is in there. And to start off with, you might just have sort of 5 objects, or 3 objects even, and then ask children to close their eyes, and then you move an object, and then they open them, and you ask them what has moved, or you remove an object and you ask them what has been removed. And so then building that up to having more and more objects and having more and more space, that you're trying to get children to figure out what's either been moved or what's now missing, until you can then do that through the entire classroom, that they've got such an observation, they understand the classroom so well that they know exactly when something has moved. And of course, when you're getting to the whole classroom area, you would start off with big things like potentially moving desks around, or moving all of the chairs from one group of tables to another group of tables. So things that are very obvious to begin with and then start to become more and more specific. Pretend to be an ant is another one, and get an ant's eye view of the world. So we often hear about bird's eye view so much, but get children to pretend to be an ant and crawl around on the ground and pretend to look up at different things and what would life be like for an ant to look up at the world from that point of view. Cellophane goggles, it might be that you actually make some cellophane goggles, or you just get children to hold different coloured cellophane over their eyes and pay attention to what the world looks like through different colours. For example, red cellophane, orange cellophane, green cellophane, whatever it might be. Looking through glass prisms and paying attention to the different reflections that you get and different patterns. Or pick a flower and observe how the flower changes over a week. So once it's been picked, it's going to start to slowly die. And pay attention to how that flower changes over the week, or maybe a leaf off a tree or whatever it may be. But pay attention to how different things, it might actually be that you go out into the environment and pay attention to how the light looks over time. So how different things change over a week. So how the light changes over a week, particularly when you're going across seasons. So from the wet to the dry, or from, if you're down south, from autumn into winter, and how the environment changes over time. Alright, so encouraging creativity and enjoyment. So it's really important that you allow students freedom and time to explore and discover. So give them the time to be able to just explore with the activity that you're doing, and give them the freedom. So not so many constraints on, I would like you to do this and this and this, but give them the freedom and time to explore different things out in the environment or in the classroom and discover different things. Allow students to produce art without their work being compared or judged. So don't ask them what is it that they're planning on doing. And of course it's good to do this as well, but remember that it's also good to not do it. So in developing creativity and an enjoyment for the arts, allow students to produce something without actually comparing it to another student's work. And kids will naturally do this anyway, but talk about how what they develop is all about what's inside them and what they're thinking and what they're feeling. Don't judge it by saying, and of course you wouldn't say that's bad, but don't judge it in any way by previous work or other work that they've done, because it's something which is completely unique and different. So allow students to produce their art for what it is. Allow students to create without being asked in advance what they're planning to create. So I've touched on that a few times now, but just give them the opportunity to start creating something. Don't tell them what you want them to create. Don't scaffold it in any way. Just give them the tools and the materials and let them go for it and create whatever it is that they feel like creating. Allow them to develop their own creativity muscle. Allow students to use whatever colour and materials they choose without being quizzed on why you chose them. And I know this is a natural thing as a teacher, and the more you teach, the more you want to ask, so how come you chose that? And you want to make them recognise consciously, why they may have chosen something. And that is great. But at the same time, it's also great to not quiz them on why they chose something. So, just walking around the classroom and just being content with seeing that some children have chosen these materials and some children have chosen these materials and different colours, and just encourage the fact that they've chosen that, and say that looks lovely, that looks nice, and but don't quiz them on why have you chosen the fly swat to make that pattern, why did you choose blue, and so on. And so give them just complete freedom, and that then develops that muscle of creativity, and they start to enjoy the process a lot more, because it's they've got ownership there. they're doing it for them. Alright, so next one, Parsons' theory of the stages in the development of the arts. And we're nearly done. Okay, so Parsons' theory. So you've got stage one, an interest in colour favourites, so pictorial representation, personal connection to the subject, and enjoyment of painting. So this was from 1987, and I'll just read through. So aesthetic awareness. Aesthetics, I was just waiting for this to come up on my other computer. Aesthetics is defined for this subject as an area of the arts that is connected with feelings and responses to the world in which we live. Remember, arts is all about making and responding. When children are given the opportunity to sense, view, and explore the beautiful things surrounding them, they begin to appreciate their different environments and the elements within it. So Parsons' theory of the stages in the development of the arts, there's 5 stages. Stage 1 is an interest in colour favourites. So children will start to develop an interest in certain colours, and they'll start to have favourite colours. And asking children what their favourite colours are is something which can have very positive emotions arise within them. Pictorial representations, and there'll be a personal connection to the subject and an enjoyment of painting when children are using colours that they have a positive association to. Stage 2, the viewer likes a painting. So then in the development of the arts, you'll then move into stage 2, which is where the viewer likes a painting because it is beautiful and has realistic qualities. So typically, as you develop in your ability, you'll like things because they have a realistic quality. Whereas then as you develop and you move into then stage 3, the viewer sees the feelings the work of art produces regardless of beauty or realistic qualities. So as you become more developed, you can then move away from seeing things as being beautiful because they're realistic in a way, or they have a realistic quality, and you then see how the feelings of the work of art produce, so you see the feelings the work of art produces regardless of the beauty of it or the realistic quality. So it doesn't have to have realistic qualities, but you can still see the feelings the art produces. And then you move into stage 4, and the viewer is aware of his or her ability to interpret a painting. So you can see that you can interpret a painting in different ways, and it's neither right or wrong. It's just you've got an ability to be able to interpret it. And then stage 5 is judgment. So judgment is individual, but the viewer feels the need for discussing an intersubjective understanding. So you need to sort of speak to other people in order to get their perspectives on something, and so your judgment is related. You start to want to discuss things in order to judge things, and it becomes intersubjective. The last 2 slides. So we've got primary colours. So the primary colours are colours that cannot be made from mixing other colours. This is something which may be basic to some people and something which is new to others, but you generally probably learnt this way back in your primary years and may have forgotten it, but the 3 primary colours are red, blue and yellow. White is also a primary colour, but it's not considered so, like black it's considered a tint. And then the secondary colours are colours that can be made by mixing primary colours. So when you mix your primary colours, you can develop 3 secondary colours, and those colours are green, orange and purple. So I highly suggest that you go and check out LearnLine. There's I've touched on bits and pieces in LearnLine. There's a lot of information, extra information on LearnLine that you can go into. You can click links and you can follow, in particular with so in part 1, the visual arts, go through here, have a look at the readings on there, what can teachers do to encourage children. Have a look at the video, so how you can explore with different play materials in my art room. And in module, in part B, there's some stuff in here. So again, have a read of this, A Slice of Life, the interrelationships among art, play, and the real life of the young child. This will be a very interesting activity. Please look at the two scenarios below and answer the questions below them down here. So with this one, how to make a fun summer watermelon letter holder. So go and have a look in there at the 20 children doing a certain activity. And then when you go into this one, have a look at the 20 children doing something in that one and how that's different. So the children paint under pedagogy of mature artists. And then the last one, part C, is all about creativity and enjoyment. You've got Parsons' theory on the stages in the development of the arts, and then the colour awareness. And then it suggests that you have a look at the PowerPoints, a reflection, what art speaks to you, what do you like and why. If you can get yourself to an art gallery, that would be great. If you can't, then there's this PowerPoint presentation here for you to have a look at and then reflect back on that. Okay, thank you. I hope this has served you well. This module, the next module will be on music, and I will see you next week.